Hey guys, welcome to the Dream Lab. Thanks for joining us. We are excited to see what kind of dreams people have had today. So we're going to be doing a few of the episodes you'll be watching over the next couple months, all in one filming. So we're going to have some fun times, and we hope that you'll enjoy this as well. Our first dream is Alicia. Alicia, why don't you come on up?
Okay, so I dreamed me and my husband were at a zoo. And we saw this enclosure. There was a concrete enclosure, and we knew the zookeeper was about to feed an animal. We weren't sure what it was, but when he opened it, we saw it was a bunch of snakes. And so while we were standing there, once he opened the enclosure, a snake flew out, and it came directly at me and bit me on my thumb. We knew immediately that the snake was poisonous, and I had to get to a doctor. And someone told me that my Aunt Glenda was going to take me to a doctor, and I had 40 minutes to get there. My aunt never showed up, and so my husband took me to the doctor. The doctor gave me the antivenom, and I could feel my thumb throbbing. When she gave me the antivenom, it stopped throbbing. We left, and as I was walking, my thumb began to have spasms, and when I looked down at my thumb transformed into the snake, and then it disappeared and went back to normal.
Okay. Very good. All right, so let's see if I can remember this one. So you and your husband are going to a zoo to walk around and look at things. You go to an enclosure, and they're about ready to feed what's in the enclosure. You don't know what's in the enclosure, but when the zookeeper opens up the door to begin feeding, you see all these snakes. One of the snakes flies out of the enclosure and bites you on your thumb. Now, you were pointing towards your left thumb. Was it your left thumb, or do you remember?
It was my left, probably.
It was on the left. Okay. And you know that it's a venomous snake, and so there's poison. You've got to get that taken care of. Somebody says that your Aunt Glenda, your Aunt Glenda is coming to take you to the hospital. You've only got 40 minutes to get there. She doesn't show up to take you to the hospital, so your husband takes you to the hospital. You get to the hospital, the doctor gives you the antivenom, and the throbbing that you've been experiencing in the thumb goes away. You leave. As you leave, now what was the sensation you felt in your thumb?
It was like spasms.
Like
I could feel it.
Spasm. Okay. So you could feel your thumb spasming, and when you look down at it, the thumb turns into the snake and then back into your thumb, and that's when the dream ends.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much. So what you're going to do is, here in a second, pause the video. I want you to come up with a title. What's the title of this dream? What are the focus? What's your sub-focuses? What are your details? And then work out your interpretation. Once you have a chance to work out the interpretation, go ahead and start the video again, and we'll let you know what we got here in the lab. Hey guys, welcome back to the lab. Let's go through this dream and see what it means. So what did you guys come up with for a title for this one?
Snake bite.
Snake bite, snake bit. We'll do snake bit. Snake bit. We'll do snake bite because it's easier. The shorter the word, the easier it is. The less likelihood of me doing a misspelling. I think I could spell bitten, but just in case. What is our focus?
The dreamer.
The dreamer, yes. And our sub-focuses.
Snake. The snake.
And one more sub-focus.
Thumb.
All right. Oops. And what are our details? And the zoo, I mean, we could put the zoo off of the snake or the dreamer. See, when you're thinking snake, you write an S instead of a Z. But I'm going to put it off the snake. What else?
The bite.
The bite. Yes. Okay. Anything else?
Glenda. The name.
Glenda. The aunt that didn't get there to get her to the hospital. And let me see. I'm going to try to put this in here.
$40.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if we never figure out who the zookeeper is, probably won't change anything. That would be like a sub-detail. Actually, I'll do this here because leaving room. And then we have lots of options. I'm just going to put doctor, and we'll remember the anti-venom. Got to the hospital, got the anti-venom. Because again, if you put too many things on your diagram, it just becomes confusing. The point of the diagram is to simplify the dream, make it as easy as possible for you to understand. It's not to make sure you have every piece of the dream so you don't forget anything. It's to clarify the dream. So the doctor would be a detail. And I'm just going to put spasm, and we'll remember the whole thing of the spasm, and then it turns back into the serpent, and then goes back to the thumb. All right. What's the dreamer? Is the dreamer literal or is the dreamer metaphorical?
Literal.
Literal. Yeah, it's about the dreamer. Okay. Snake. Lies, deception. Okay. Right, yeah, it's more of a toxic, like something that gets into the system, that affects the system. Glinda. What will Glinda represent?
Holiness.
Holiness?
Her name.
So the name means holiness. Now, did holiness not show up to help her with the bite?
No, I think it'd be your natural family.
It could be about natural family. Right, looking for family to help, but they're not able to help. Very good. Yeah, so we kind of touched on the bite, but when you get bit by a snake, it means you're affected or hurt by the deception or the lie. So if you just see the snake, you're recognizing that it's there, but it may or may not have affected you in any way. But once you get bit, it's actually affected you, it's hurt you. So I'm just going to write hurt there. Why the thumb? Well, what's the thumb talking about? The thumb could talk about apostolic. Now, you guys remember in the advanced workshop, and actually in the Understanding Dreams and Visions course, we talk about the 5 fingers representing the 5 different aspects of Grace Ministries, or the 5-fold ministry: the apostolic, the prophetic, the evangelistic, the pastoral, and the teacher. So the apostolic, not necessarily, because sometimes we use the word apostolic and we have this very particular box that we put that in. So the key aspect of apostolic is authority. So the thumb can also represent your authority. Authority or leadership. Okay, now, curiosity. If the doctor's Jesus, the cure that Jesus gives isn't effective, in general, a doctor could possibly mean Jesus because the Lord is our healer, Exodus 15:33. But it also could just talk about healing in general. So there was a level of healing that was received. Right, so the doctor, I think in this one, it maybe not necessarily Jesus, but definitely represents healing. Now, the healing would be the healing that God is giving, because that's the only way you're going to get healed from a deception is by truth. So if you could put Jesus in there, but I think it's more specifically about healing. The question would be, why in the dream did they actually have the spasm versus having the thought or the sense that they needed to look at it? Or in the dream, they're looking at their thumb to make sure that nothing further is there. Because if they were looking at their thumb to make sure there was nothing further that was there, then you would think that they needed to keep watch on it. But the dream doesn't say anything about keeping an eye on it. It just says that there is a muscle spasm and that the thumb turned into a snake and affected. So what would a muscle spasm represent? When your muscle spasms, it's an involuntary movement. Something that happens that feels out of control. Right? It's an action taken that feels like you don't have control over it. Right? The stimulus is in the system, but it feels like, boy, where did that come from? I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to think that. Once you get your whole interpretation, then you need to take a look at the interpretation. All right, now where is this in the dream? Where is this in the dream? Well, it's not in the dream, but it kind of points to that. Well, okay. Then pull that piece out of the interpretation, add it as commentary afterwards if you feel it's necessary, if you feel like there's something from the Lord on it. Because it can be. It could be very key to understanding, but you don't want to say that that is part of the interpretation unless it's in the dream itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So what about the 40 minutes? 40 represents the 40 years in the wilderness. It's the season. It's the full journey. If it doesn't get taken care of in this season, it can be life-threatening. It has to be taken care of before this season is out. Could it be a generation? Because 40 could also represent a generation. It could be, but there's nothing else in the dream that would point to that way. They were at a zoo. They weren't at the family home. They didn't find it in the basement of their home or their parents' home. Or in the yard. It was at a zoo, which has nothing to do with the family. It's an outside place that they went and visited. It's not a place that they lived. So that's where the lie was given access, if you will, at the zoo, right? So that's why it was important that it's a zoo, because the thing about a zoo is you have animals, some dangerous, some not dangerous, but they're protected and you're protected. And there's a clear separation for them, but the separation was taken down.
The zookeeper opened it up.
The zookeeper opened it up because they were trying to feed the deception.
To feed it, yes.
Yeah, it wasn't obvious that it was a deception at first, but people are trying to feed the deception, and because of that opening, it's had the ability to affect the dreamer. So let's get a couple people to come up and share what they got as an interpretation for the dreamer. Everybody's pointing at each other. You go talk. You go talk. We'll get a couple volunteers. Or we'll get a couple voluntold. One of the two. Yay, Alan.
Well, Alicia, I think the main point in this dream is that when you're in a life or death situation, don't depend on Aunt Glenda. But beyond that, I feel like what this, and I have to thank my group, because it was my group altogether that really came together and had great insight into this dream, I feel like. But we understand that you're a believer, and so I would say this differently to an unbeliever, but since you're a believer, we feel like that there was in your life, or could be, a situation where there's a lie that impacts your life, and that there is an urgency to deal with that and not put it off, because there could be ongoing effects if it's put off. But looking at Aunt Glenda actually might indicate natural help or natural resources that don't come through for you. But your husband, which we feel like is symbolic of the Lord Jesus, has the antivenom. He has the truth to counteract the lie so that it does not have an ongoing effect. As you apply the antivenom, you may notice that there are some after effects or some things that are not totally dealt with. And so but you'll see it for what it is. And then as you continue to apply the antivenom or continue to work the truth into your life, then this lie will be dealt with and be cut off. And we feel like this may be when we think about the categories of dreams that John Paul gave us, we feel like this may be in the category of a warning or a heads up dream to let you know.
Man, that's good. That's good. Anybody else? Get one more.
So what I would say to you today, Alicia, is that the Lord has shown you something incredible, that you have something on the inside of you that is so incredible. And as you're walking in the power and authority of your destiny, there'll be things that come against you that will fly at you. You didn't expect it. It might have been covered up before. But as we go through the world, and even when we enter into chaotic situations, that there are individuals who will expose, and that ends up being very helpful to us. It might be damaging to you at first. You might feel pain. It might affect you internally, but God will always send his people to help you, and you'll have a discernment of who's going to help and who's not going to help. And I really believe that in this time, it's this short season of figuring out and discerning what needs to be done and getting to that fast enough so that it can be redeemed. That is at your fingertips. And the Lord is always going to be faithful to pull you out of the situations that we get into that we didn't foresee. He will give you the grace to cover it and the preservation
Yeah.
to endure it, perseverance to endure it, but also the triumph so that you walk in victory as you walk out of there, because you did walk out of there, got what you needed, and then when you saw it right on your hand, then you have the ability to go to the next step and say, I'm not going to be part of this anymore.
That's good.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about, we've taught this in the Dream Interpretation Intensive and a couple other places, is a timing of a dream. When you have a cliffhanger on a dream, it's usually a clue to the timing. And this one ends with, that's a snake. And dream ends like cliffhanger. Says that they're probably at that place right now. So they've gone through most of this, and they're just now realizing it. And so thinking about it that way, using the principles, what you guys got, I'm just going to put a different timing onto the same idea. You two went into a situation that was rather chaotic, and it had nothing to do with your actions, but people that were in a place of authority opened you guys up to an attack. Mm-hmm. And it specifically affected you and affected your leadership call that God has given you. And you've gone through healing. You recognize how urgent it was to deal with that. You weren't able to get the help where you first looked for it, but you were able to get the help that you needed. And you've dealt with that to an extent. But you're starting to realize some things, some involuntary actions that are happening, and realizing that there's still a little bit more of that deception that needs to be dealt with for the fullness of freedom that you're looking for. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Yeah. And see how that timing piece draws it in just a little bit. So look for it, especially when you have those cliffhangers, because it's a warning dream. Right? There's this happened, and this is where you're at right now. This is still that same thing. This is what the root of that involuntary action is. You're realizing that there's a lie, but this dream now told you, where did it start? Where did this begin? Which lets you know how to deal with it. Now, again, now we're bringing in the wisdom that's outside of the dream. Like, here's the principles that we know. It's been dealt with at one level, but there's another level to deal with it. And the dream shows exactly the root of these involuntary actions that she's starting to realize, wait a second, where is this coming from? There's a lie there. And that's the key. That's one of the beautiful things about dream interpretation is it forces you to confront your strongholds.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you're afraid of telling someone you're going through something right now, you will change a dream to be about the past or the future, but you won't say that you're going through this right now. Right. If you're afraid of telling somebody that they have an issue, you will change the issue into an encouragement. Mm-hmm. And you won't be honest. Or if you think that God's not going to encourage anybody, that he's always going to be pointing out what needs to be fixed because he just wants you better than where you are right now, then all you're going to be able to see is that. You're not going to be able to understand a dream that is saying, man, right on, you're doing great. I'm so proud of you right now. But you'll end up, your strongholds will cause you to not be able to see the interpretation clearly. And it's a beautiful thing about dream interpretation. And I've grown so much in recognizing how my thought patterns affected what I thought I was hearing from God through dream interpretation, and mainly through that process of constantly bringing, oh, where's this in the dream? Where is this in the dream? Well, that's not actually in the dream. Okay, well, I can't have it as part of the, man, but that's not comfortable. But I've had to deal with that because I was going to have integrity with the dream itself and not make myself feel better or look better or sound nicer or any of those things, just letting the dream be the dream. And so absolute honesty with yourself and absolute honesty with the dream it'll actually cause, the dreams will give you an opportunity for sanctification, and you'll grow in your ability to hear God better if you hold that discipline. Hey guys, thanks for joining us on the lab. Hope you got something out of that, and hope you learned some cool principles about dream interpretation. We'll see you guys next time.